In ancient Egypt, clothing was a direct reflection of order, purity, and divine connection. In a climate of intense heat, linen became the fabric of life. Light, breathable, and practical, it allowed survival in the desert environment. But it was more than utility. Linen was considered pure. Among noblewomen, garments were simple in structure, but powerful in meaning. But it is the accessories that reveal true status. Gold collars rested heavily across the chest, not as decoration alone, but as symbols of divine protection. Gold was believed to be the flesh of the gods themselves. Jewelry layered across the arms and wrists communicated wealth, but also spiritual authority. Even wigs were intentional. Carefully braided and adorned, they signified social rank while protecting the body from the harsh sun. Beauty and function existed together. In Egypt, clothing was not fashion. It was theology made visible. In ancient Greece, clothing was lighter, simpler, and designed around movement. Women commonly wore the chiton, a long garment made from linen or lightweight wool, fastened at the shoulders with decorative pins and allowed to drape naturally down the body. Over it, many wore the himation, a larger outer cloth wrapped around the shoulders or arms for warmth, modesty, or status. Greek garments relied less on stitching and more on folding, wrapping, and fastening. Accessories were practical, but they also reflected class and refinement. Bronze belts were often tied around the waist to control the flow of fabric and create shape within the loose silhouette. Jewelry was usually made from bronze, gold, or beads, depending on wealth. Circular earrings, cuffs, and bracelets were common among noblewomen, though typically less oversized than Egyptian jewelry. Sandals were constructed with thin leather straps wrapped around the feet and ankles, designed for walking across stone streets and warm terrain. Their open design helped with ventilation in the Mediterranean climate. Hair was also carefully styled. Women often wore naturally curled hair tied loosely or pinned into soft arrangements using ribbons, bands, or metal hairpieces. The fabrics themselves mattered. Linen was valued for its breathability during hot summers, while wool garments were used in cooler seasons. Wealthier citizens could afford finer dyed fabrics, while simpler undyed materials were more common among lower classes. Greek clothing focused less on heavy ornamentation and more on controlled elegance through fabric, proportion, and craftsmanship. Roman noblewomen typically wore a long stola layered over an inner tunic, with an outer draped garment called the palla wrapped around the shoulders or arms when outside the home. The fabrics were usually wool for everyday wear, though wealthy families could afford finer imported linen or silk blends. Cream, deep red, burgundy, and saffron tones became popular among upper-class women because dyed fabrics were expensive and signaled wealth. One of the most recognizable Roman accessories was the fibula, a decorative metal pin used to fasten garments together. These pins were often made from gold or bronze and engraved with detailed patterns. Some included gemstones or colored glass pieces to display status. Jewelry was layered heavily among wealthy Roman women. Gold necklaces with emeralds, pearls, and carved gemstones were common, especially among elite families connected to politics or trade. Bracelets and rings were also widely worn, often featuring serpent motifs, leaves, or Roman mythological symbols. Hairstyles became an important sign of status during the Roman Empire. Noblewomen curled their hair using heated metal tools, then arranged it into structured, layered styles, secured with decorative gold hairpins and combs. More elaborate hairstyles usually meant access to servants skilled in hair arrangement. Leather sandals remained common footwear, but upper-class versions were made with finer leather, dyed straps, and decorative detailing. Roman clothing focused heavily on layering, fastening, and ornamentation. It appeared more controlled and structured, with accessories doing much of the visual work in showing class and refinement. Han Dynasty noblewomen typically wore layered Hanfu robes made from silk with wide sleeves, crossed collars, and long flowing skirts tied together using sash belts around the waist. Silk was the dominant fabric among upper classes because China had already developed advanced silk production techniques. Higher quality silk garments often included embroidered floral or cloud patterns stitched directly into the sleeves and robe edges. Accessories were heavily focused on hair ornaments and jade jewelry. Hair was usually arranged into structured buns or layered styles, secured with jade hairpins, combs, or decorative metal pieces. Jade was especially valued because it symbolized purity, status, and refinement in Chinese society. Bracelets made from carved jade were common among wealthy women, alongside small pendants and embroidered silk pouches attached to belts or sashes. The robes themselves were layered intentionally, with visible sleeve openings and overlapping collars creating contrast between different silk colors and textures. Han Dynasty fashion focused less on metallic decoration and more on flowing silk, embroidery, and refined accessories integrated directly into the garment structure.
Heian noblewomen wore the junihitoe, a multi-layered kimono ensemble made from silk robes stacked on top of one another to create visible color combinations at the sleeves and collar openings. The number and arrangement of layers often reflected status, season, or court fashion trends. Color coordination became one of the most important visual elements in aristocratic Japanese clothing. Hair was worn extremely long, often reaching the floor, and styled with ornate combs, ribbons, and decorative hair ornaments made from lacquered wood, gold, or floral materials. Makeup also became an accessory of status. Women painted their lips in small red shapes and used pale facial makeup to match beauty standards of the imperial court. Wide flowing sleeves were designed to display layered silk colors during movement, making sleeve openings an important part of elite fashion presentation. Unlike Roman or Greek jewelry-heavy styling, Heian fashion relied more on silk layering, color harmony, hair presentation, and subtle ornamentation rather than large visible gemstones or metal accessories.
Women in the Mali Empire wore woven garments made from locally produced cotton and richly textured fabrics in earth tones, deep indigo shades, and warm natural colors. Gold jewelry became one of the most recognizable features of elite Malian fashion due to the empire's control over major gold trade routes across West Africa. Layered gold necklaces, pendants, bracelets, and cuffs were commonly worn by noblewomen, often featuring engraved geometric or symbolic patterns. Head wraps were also an important accessory. These were wrapped in structured folds using long fabric pieces and could indicate wealth, marital status, or regional identity, depending on style and fabric quality. Textiles themselves carried visual importance through woven strip patterns and detailed stitching techniques unique to different West African cultures. Mali Empire fashion emphasized jewelry, woven fabric craftsmanship, and bold textile presentation. Ottoman noblewomen wore layered silk robes combined with embroidered outer garments and fitted decorative vests. The fabrics were heavily detailed with floral embroidery stitched using gold or silver thread, especially around sleeves, collars, and robe openings. Jewelry was highly ornate. Women wore gemstone necklaces, stacked rings, bracelets, and jeweled pendants featuring pearls, emeralds, rubies, and turquoise stones sourced through Ottoman trade networks. Headpieces became one of the most visually elaborate accessories in Ottoman fashion. Decorative crowns, jeweled caps, and pearl-covered hair ornaments were used alongside layered veils and embroidered fabrics. The robe layers themselves often combined multiple textile patterns together, creating contrast between silk textures, embroidery, and decorative trims. Ottoman elite clothing relied heavily on surface decoration. Embroidery, gemstones, metallic threadwork, and richly patterned fabrics covering nearly every visible section of the garment. Medieval European noblewomen typically wore long, layered gowns over linen underdresses, combined with belts, cloaks, veils, and embroidered outer garments. Wool remained the most common fabric because of colder climates, though wealthier families could afford imported silk trims, velvet details, or finer dyed textiles. Belts became important accessories, often made with engraved metal buckles and decorative hanging pieces attached at the waist. Veils and head coverings were widely worn among women, especially noble women, using linen or lightweight fabrics arranged over braided hairstyles. Embroidery was concentrated around sleeves, necklines, and dress borders, often stitched by hand using colored thread or metallic detailing. Heavy wool cloaks were used for warmth and were fastened using decorative brooches or clasps made from bronze or silver. Medieval European clothing relied more on layered fabric weight, embroidery, and practical accessories designed for colder environments.
Victorian noblewomen wore tightly structured dresses built around corsets, layered petticoats, fitted bodices, and full skirts designed to create a narrow waist silhouette. Corsets were reinforced using whalebone or steel supports and tightened using laces at the back, shaping posture as well as body form. Accessories became extremely detailed during this period. Lace gloves were commonly worn outdoors and during social events, often featuring floral lace patterns and delicate stitching. Hats were decorated with feathers, ribbons, artificial flowers, and lace trimming, while parasols were carried to protect pale skin from sunlight, which was associated with upper-class status. Jewelry included lockets, cameo brooches, pearl necklaces, and gemstone earrings, though accessories were usually coordinated carefully with the dress rather than layered heavily like Roman or Ottoman fashion. Fabric textures also became more complex, combining satin, lace, velvet, and embroidered materials within a single outfit. Victorian fashion focused heavily on structure, fitted tailoring, decorative accessories, and highly controlled silhouettes rather than loose drapery or flowing layered robes.
Like the video if you learned something new, and subscribe for more historical content every week.